You are listening to the Legacy Chronicles podcast. This is Series 1, Franco Scala, an Italian master of piano artisanship. Episode 1, An Apology and Gratitude.
The most important thing in the world when it comes to human beings is simply this: everyone is born with a talent.
I'm Cristina Altamura. This podcast is an oral history about a piano academy in a small city in Italy, where for the last 30 years, remarkable things have been happening. My teacher, Franco Scala, started it in his living room after leaving the Italian conservatory system behind. He handpicked a small team of colleagues and students to join him in Imola. Together, they pioneered a new model of collaborative teaching. Since that time, students of the Imola Academy have won more than 80 awards in international piano competitions and are teaching and performing across the globe. When I came back to America after studying with Scala for 5 years, few people here knew about it. I wanted to tell the story of this remarkable person, an artisan teacher, tied to the land of his ancestors, and the school he founded that has produced such phenomenal pianists. Over time, I came to understand why Scala's approach works especially well in Imola. It is located close to Bologna, home to Europe's oldest university, and right next door to Tuscany. As food connoisseurs know well, the Emilia-Romagna region has a special culture of obsessive commitment to quality. The artisanal aging process is never rushed and never compromised. Scala's philosophy reflects this regional culture. Throughout this podcast, we will talk to some of Maestro Scala's closest friends and collaborators. We will hear more about his teaching philosophy, which applies as much to life in general as it does to the piano. And along the way, we will listen to recordings by former students who are performing and teaching around the globe. In 1999, Scala published an article titled An Apology and Gratitude for a book celebrating the 10th anniversary of his academy. Here is an excerpt which expresses his view on teaching and talent.
Developing a pedagogical conscience. This is the key. Young artists should not consider teaching to be a backup plan for their aspirations as concert pianists. They must acknowledge the great social responsibility of the profession. To deceive a student about his own abilities, or to carry him through graduation without first considering what he will do in life, would be as if a surgeon were to extract a healthy person's spleen merely to demonstrate skill. I don't know if what I have taught in my life is meaningful, or if my writing makes sense, but of one thing I am sure: if you find yourself before a true talent, nature has already set its course. You must not modify the student's talent or try to make it match another talent, but realize what they need from you, for it is never the farmer who teaches a plant how to grow, but the plant who teaches the farmer how to make it grow. Franco Scala, 1999.
Franco Scala was born in Italy just before World War II started. He came from a family that worked the famously fertile land of the Romagnolo hillside. His siblings and father all played instruments by ear, and it was common for the neighbors to gather at the end of the day for the meal, followed by a long session of music making. After the war, thanks to the local piano teacher, la maestra Enrica Bertazzini, he started formal piano lessons. He continued his studies at the Bologna Conservatory and then received a scholarship that allowed him to study in Rome at the National Academy of Santa Cecilia with the great pianist and conductor Carlo Zecchi, himself a student of Busoni and Schnabel. During those years, Scala had the opportunity to work with the great Russian pianist Nikita Magalov. During Scala's years in Rome, Italy was still trying to recover economically from the war. Scala was able to supplement his scholarship by taking a job playing the piano in a nightclub on Via Veneto, where many well-known singers, names like Corrado Loiacono and others passed through. He often had to accompany them by ear, improvising on the tangos and waltzes that they sang.
Lo potrai posare sui biondi capelli, quella nube d'oro accarezzerò. Questa piccolissima serenata, con un fil di voce si può cantare. Ogni innamorato all'innamorata la sussurrerà, la sussurrerà.
Scala was encouraged by Zecchi to observe the Argentinian pianist Fausto Zadra. Zadra was a disciple of Vicente Scaramuzza, an Italian pianist who founded his own school after moving to Argentina in 1907. Scaramuzza was responsible for several generations of Argentinian pianists that included Martha Argerich and the Barenboim family. Maestro Scaramuzza had developed exercises for strengthening piano technique called I martelletti, or the little hammers. These exercises fortify the hand using the weight of the body. The fingers develop a steel-like strength so that the arms are free to flow like water. In this way, one develops a deep connection with the keyboard, and the pianist acquires a toolkit for producing many colors. Scala learned the martelletti exercises by sitting near Zadra while he practiced, and he built upon them by analyzing Zadra's playing. What struck him was that even in the most difficult passages, Zadra was relaxed and didn't use unnecessary muscle groups. In the piano world, most people agreed that Zadra's playing was never harsh or metallic, no matter how loudly he played. Scala told me that he never again heard a sound like Zadra's. At Zecchi's urging, Scala was ready to start his concert career, but soon he began to experience crippling stage fright. His mind would suddenly go blank. This crisis in his playing steered him decisively towards his passion for pedagogy. He had a natural instinct for the psychology of teaching and for the ways in which the body and mind integrate in performance. Scala's first teaching position was at the Pesaro Conservatory. As a young teacher in the conservatory, he thought there was too much incentive for faculty to prioritize their own reputations above students' needs. Imagining an alternative to this system, he decided to retire early to focus on his most promising students. He wanted to tend to their growth as human beings, their emotional and psychological well-being, and to prepare them to face the difficulties of a career in music. He envisioned an incubator where exceptional young pianists could mature into their artistry. He realized that anybody who hoped to pursue a career in performance would need to possess not only a high level of talent, but also a broad range of personal qualities. In this conversation with Scala from August of 2017, he talked about teaching in Pesaro. The director of the conservatory at that time was Marcello Abbado, a towering figure in the Italian piano world, and brother to the famed conductor Claudio Abbado. In 1995, I studied briefly but intensively with Marcello Abbado in Milano, and during that time, he encouraged me to audition for Scala in Imola.
Era Abbado che decideva se un insegnante, sai, ti decideva se potevi continuare a lavorare oppure no.
That's right.
Dipendeva da lui.
It was Abbado to decide if the teacher could continue to work or not, because it was up to him to classify teachers as great, good, mediocre, or conversely, if he considered you unsuitable, if you did not perform adequately.
Io insegnavo, dovevo fare 12 ore settimanali, forse ne facevo 3 volte tanto. Perché andavo.
You could actually lose your job.
Insegnavo sempre.
So, for fear of losing it, what would I do? I was responsible for teaching 12 hours a week. But in practice, I was teaching probably triple that time. Because I taught Saturdays, Sundays, I taught constantly. That is, for fear of losing my job. And what happened? I was so obsessed with making my students play their best. After 3, 4, 5 years, my students began to graduate with the highest grades and honors, even the least gifted among them.
Dopo passato il tempo, che ormai non volevano venire tutti nella mia classe perché ero quello che facevo prendere tutti bei voti. 10.
I mean, even those who were foundering and unsuited for a piano career. I was entirely obsessed. I made them study. I was with them and taught them how to practice for hours on end. Conclusion? After some time passed, everyone wanted a spot in my class because I was the reason they graduated with the highest honors. My class was always full, but after 7, 8, maybe 10 years, I started to think, what is it that these students I taught are now doing in their lives? I remembered one father in particular, a traffic cop, told me, "You know, maestro, my son graduated with honors, and I wish to buy him a grand piano. I'll get a loan, but I want this grand piano." I remember the sacrifice he undertook. Poor guy. He indebted himself for this piano, even though it was a used one. A question arose within me. I should like to track down the students I've had. And so I contacted that particular father. "Listen," I said, "how's everything? How is your boy?" I remember he said, "You know, maestro, my son wants nothing to do with the piano anymore. He's off to work at a library. He doesn't even want to open the keyboard lid anymore. In fact, if you know someone who would like it, please let me know. I'll sell it." And so I started calling everyone. Very few students I had encouraged later pursued a career in music. Of the girls I taught, some married and became housewives or did other things. Only a few of my students had made a life in music.
Il rapporto con la musica. E allora cominciò da quel momento a mettere in discussione il conservatorio. Il conservatorio, cioè in discussione me stesso, sia chiaro.
I started to question the very nature of the conservatory. That is, I started to question myself. Let's be clear. At the end of the day, I felt I had used them as a means of proving to myself and to the director and the administration that I was a great teacher. I used them to show everyone I was good without giving much thought to their future. I felt I hadn't been honest and said to myself, "But do you realize what has become of these kids?" And so I resolved that I would build a school where the exact opposite happens. Those who seek to pursue music must be 99% sure that they will have a good chance of succeeding. To pursue piano professionally. And so, to these former conservatory students, I offered my sincere apology.
Questi ragazzi qui non avrebbero mai avuto dei voti da dire 10 lode.
Those students, they should have never gotten the highest marks. They were misled into the illusion that they could become musicians, they could become professional pianists, if I had not taught them so many hours, all the time. If I had stuck with the 12 hours that I was supposed to teach them, they wouldn't have gotten those high marks. Instead, I used them to prove I was a very good teacher. Indeed, those years they spent in conservatory and dedicated their life to it, they lost so many opportunities to pursue university, studying other things rather than perfecting their playing. They gave 10, 12 years of their lives to something they thought was possible, thanks to me, of really making it as a musician. And instead, it wasn't possible. It wasn't possible because they lacked certain qualities, and I knew it. I realized that I treated both talented and untalented students the same way, to make them play as well as possible. I thought I had harmed them. And so I apologized to these kids, whom I had influenced in a negative way. As a result, I inaugurated the academy to redeem myself. And I was strict, because out of 100 kids whom I taught at home, only 2 were later admitted. 2. Enrico Pace and Enrico Belli. 3 teachers for 2 students. Lazar Berman, Boris Petrushansky, and I. I only chose 2 students because I was utterly befallen with guilt. I said to myself, no, they must absolutely be exceptional. And I wasn't wrong. The students I chose later established a career in music. That's what the Academy is for. When and if it loses this standard, it won't interest me anymore. And whom do I thank? Those who gave me the opportunity to build it. They gave me an opportunity for redemption. I apologize to my students, and I thank those who allowed me to build the Academy. I no longer have a guilty conscience. It is for this reason that the Academy attained such an international standing. Even today, students from all over the world come to audition with me. And I say the truth, I don't take a single penny for the auditions. I go through many of them. At the end, I always say what I truly think.
Scala knew that the young artists in his new academy would need to collect information from a variety of mentors. So he abolished the system of teacher-student exclusivity. Although each student would have a primary teacher, a maestro di base, they would also have access to the other teachers at the academy. The faculty formed a kind of collective support system to help students prepare for their professional lives. He also believed that the most talented younger students, the piano prodigies, needed relief from the constant pressure of performing and competing. In today's language, we'd call it holding space for the students. They needed time to grow, to try new paths, and to consider a life of artistry outside of piano competitions. He encouraged them to use that time to strengthen their interpretive ideas. He hoped that by the time they left, they would have developed a deeper sense of who they were and what they had to offer.
Guarda che per me, credo Cristina, la cosa assolutamente più importante nel mondo, negli esseri umani, sai qual è? Che ogni persona quando nasce ha un talento, qualsiasi talento.
Listen, Cristina, the most important thing in the world when it comes to human beings, for me, is simply this. Everyone is born with a talent, whatever talent. I, for example, know of 2 bricklayers who built my country home. I see them as 2 great pianists. If you see them at work, you would recognize their talent. I respect them as if they were formidable artists. Much like Graziano Bandini. I saw that he had a great talent for research, for working with wood, all of which entranced me. I gave him an instrument and I said, study this. He knew nothing, really, absolutely nothing about instrument building. He never thought of it. He took it, he studied, thought about it, reconstructed it. Something clicked, and now he builds superlative harpsichords. And he restored a beautiful graph. You see, the most important part of teaching is of recognizing talent from the very beginning. And if only schools were able to recognize quickly enough, it can be done. All you need is a little intuition and generosity. All you need is to think of the others. If you believe a student has an inclination for something special and you never tell him, or it doesn't matter to you, nothing will ever happen. At an audition, if I hear a Beethoven sonata and I'm not convinced, I ask them to play a piece from the Romantic era, then something by Bach. But at a certain point, I have a pretty good comprehensive idea of what their potential is, how imaginative they are with what they bring me. I don't base it on their technique because those are always things that can be resolved. I look at what exists inside them. One phrase is all I need. One well-expressed phrase to know if a student has that certain something inside them.
Maestro Scala is very good at identifying the unique spark of talent that each person possesses. He says, talent can be shaped, it can be nurtured, but it cannot be forced. The seed has to be there already. The best thing we can do is to help a student discover where their strengths lie and guide them in that direction. It might open up new doors for them. That is the greatest satisfaction a teacher can feel. And I think he lives for that. Acknowledgements. Thank you to Franco Scala for his generous time and for providing us access to the Academy's faculty and students. Special thanks to the US and Italy Fulbright Commission for granting me a fellowship in 1997, which allowed me to extend my time with Maestro Scala. This project is a culmination of our pedagogical work together. This podcast is made possible by supporters of Legacy Arts International. Music selections in order of appearance. Chopin Etude, Opus 25, No. 1, performed by Cristina Altamura. Bach Prelude in B minor from the Well-Tempered Clavier, Book 1, performed by Gianluca Luisi. The Liszt Sonata in B minor, performed by Fausto Zadra. Moszkowski Etincelles, performed by Igor Roma. The Transcendental Etude No. 5 by Franz Liszt, recorded for the Brilliant Classics label in 2011 by Maria Angela Vaccatello. Rachmaninoff's arrangement of Mendelssohn's Scherzo from A Midsummer Night's Dream, performed by Enrico Pace. This podcast episode was produced, written, edited, and narrated by Cristina Altamura and Adam Slowinski. Interviews were conducted by Cristina Altamura and Eleonora Corica. Our translation team included Sergio De Ludicibus, Carmela and Leonard Altamura, and Maria Grazia Faciola. English voiceovers by Leonard J. Altamura and Adam Slowinski. Audio editing and engineering by Joseph Branciforte. Find us on Facebook at Legacy Arts International. You can listen to the Legacy Chronicles podcast, Oral Histories of Master Teachers, at Spotify, iTunes, or wherever podcasts are found.